Los Angeles. A busy supermarket hums with the sound of checkout beeps and rolling carts. Amidst the chaos, 22-year-old John, a cashier with Down syndrome, carefully scans groceries. It's his first job, and he takes great pride in it. Most customers appreciate his kindness, but one woman is different. Her reaction to John is so shocking that the entire store comes to a standstill. What happens next will leave you speechless. Watch until the end. This story has a twist you won't see coming. An aggressive customer appears. The next person in line is Karen, a sharp-featured woman in her 40s, dressed in a business suit. She holds her phone to her ear, speaking loudly. "I don't have time for this," she mutters, glancing at her watch. Karen reaches the checkout and tosses her items onto the counter without saying a word. John greets her with a warm smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How's your day going?" She ignores him, too busy scrolling on her phone, her irritation obvious. John begins scanning her items, but his careful pace annoys her. "Can you hurry up? I don't have all day," she snaps, finally looking up. John flinches but keeps working. "Sorry, ma'am. I'll try to be faster." But the more he tries to speed up, the more mistakes he makes. A bag slips from his hands and several items fall to the floor. Karen rolls her eyes. "Oh, come on, this is ridiculous. Why do they even let people like you work here?" John freezes, his face turning red. He stammers, I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll pick it up." As he bends down to retrieve the items, Karen turns to the other customers in line. "Do you see this? This is why I hate coming here. They hire just about anyone these days." The other shoppers shift uncomfortably. Some look away. Others whisper among themselves. No one speaks up. Meanwhile, at the store entrance, at the front of the store, Tom Hardy walks in. Dressed in a casual black t-shirt, jeans, and sunglasses, he tries to blend into the crowd. He's in town filming a movie and decided to stop by the store to pick up a few things. As he grabs a basket and heads toward the aisles, he notices a commotion near the checkout. At first, he doesn't think much of it. Just another tense moment in a busy store. But as he gets closer, he hears Karen's raised voice. "This is unacceptable! You're holding everyone up! They should have hired someone who can actually do this job." Tom stops in his tracks, his attention now fully locked onto the scene. He watches as John, visibly shaken, struggles to finish scanning Karen's items. Tension rises. But Karen isn't done. She leans over the counter, her voice dripping with disdain. "You know, people like you shouldn't be working with customers. It's embarrassing." John's hands tremble, and he fights back tears. He wants to defend himself, but the words won't come out. The other customers in line now look visibly uncomfortable. A young man pulls out his phone and starts recording, while an elderly woman whispers to her husband. Someone should do something, but no one steps forward. Standing just a few feet away, Tom Hardy slowly removes his sunglasses. His expression shifts, from curiosity to concern, then to determination. He's seen enough. The turning point. A heavy silence hangs in the air as Tom Hardy's words sink in. The other customers glance at each other, some nodding subtly in agreement. Even the store employees have paused their work, quietly observing the confrontation unfold. Karen, sensing that the attention is shifting away from her, huffs in frustration. "Oh, give me a break! You're seriously making this a big deal?" she scoffs. Tom doesn't flinch. He takes another step forward, his presence commanding but controlled. "You think it's not a big deal to humiliate someone just because they work at a different pace than you?" he asks, his voice unwavering. Karen rolls her eyes, but the confidence in her expression is fading. "Look, I don't have time for this. If he can't handle the job, then maybe he shouldn't be working here." Tom exhales, shaking his head slightly. Then turning to John, he speaks gently but firmly. "John, how long have you been working here?" John, still rattled, lifts his head slightly. 6 months, sir." Tom nods. "And in those 6 months, have you ever treated a customer with disrespect?" John quickly shakes his head. "No, sir. I try my best to help everyone." Tom offers a small, reassuring smile before looking back at Karen. His voice remains calm, but there's a quiet intensity behind it. You see, that's the difference. John is out here doing his best, treating people with kindness, while you're tearing someone down just because you're in a hurry. Karen opens her mouth to respond, but before she can say anything, another voice cuts through the silence. He's right. Karen turns sharply, and so does Tom. It's the elderly woman who had whispered to her husband earlier. She steps forward, clutching her purse, her expression resolute. This young man has always been kind to me. I don't see why he should be treated like this. Then, another customer speaks up. A young father with a toddler in his cart. Yeah, John always helps me with my groceries. He's one of the nicest employees here. One by one, other customers begin to nod and murmur in agreement. The shift in the crowd is palpable. What was once a scene of silent discomfort is now a moment of quiet unity. Karen looks around, realizing that she no longer has the support of the crowd. She scoffs, grabbing her bag from the counter. "This is ridiculous," she mutters. Then, throwing one last glare at John, she turns on her heel and storms toward the exit. The tension finally breaks. A moment of silence lingers before a slow round of applause starts. First, from the elderly woman, then the young father, and soon, nearly the entire line is clapping. John, still stunned, looks up at Tom, his eyes glistening. "Thank you, sir," he says quietly. Tom places a reassuring hand on John's shoulder. "No need to thank me, John. You're doing great. Keep going." With that, Tom grabs a few items from a nearby display, heads to another register, and checks out as if nothing had happened. But everyone in that store knew that something important had just taken place. Tom takes a deep breath, his voice filling the store. "This young man," he says, nodding toward John, "is doing his job here. He's trying his best, just like all of us. But instead of showing him a little patience and respect, you chose to humiliate him in front of everyone." Karen opens her mouth to argue, but Tom raises his hand, silencing her. "Let me ask you something," he continues. "Have you ever had a bad day? A day when everything went wrong, and all you needed was for someone to cut you a little slack?" Karen doesn't respond, but her defiant expression wavers slightly. Tom steps closer to the counter, his voice softening to a more personal tone. "We all have those days. And you know what helps? Kindness. A little understanding. That's all he's asking for." He turns to John, who is now looking at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. "You're doing great, buddy," Tom says, his voice warm and encouraging. "Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." John manages a small smile, his shoulders loosening slightly. The other customers in the line start whispering to each other, some nodding in agreement. The young man who had been recording earlier lowers his phone, looking embarrassed. The elderly woman steps forward, her voice trembling but firm. "He's right," she says, addressing Karen. "No need to be so harsh. We're all just trying to get through the day." Another customer chimes in. "Yeah, leave him alone. He's doing the best he can." Karen looks around, realizing she no longer controls the situation. Her face reddens with embarrassment, but she's not ready to back down. "Oh, come on," she says, raising her voice. "You're all just siding with him because he's famous." Tom shakes his head, a hint of disappointment in his eyes. "It's not about me. It's about how we treat each other. Every person in this store deserves respect, no matter who they are or what they do." Karen opens her mouth to argue again, but the disapproval from the crowd is too overwhelming. She grabs her bags from the counter and looks at Tom. "You know what? I don't have time for this," she snaps, heading toward the exit. As she leaves, the automatic doors close behind her, and the store seems to collectively exhale. Tom turns to John, who is still standing behind the counter, looking stunned but grateful. "You all right, buddy?" Tom asks softly. John nods, wiping his eyes with the fusty back of his hand. Thank you, he whispers. Tom smiles and reassuringly places his hand on John's shoulder. You don't need to thank me. Just keep being yourself, okay? You're doing great. The other customers in line begin to clap quietly, their applause growing louder as more people join in. John looks around, his face lighting up with a mix of surprise and relief. The supermarket, once filled with tension, now hums with a different kind of energy. The customers in line are no longer silent observers. They're smiling, nodding, and even offering words of support to John. The young man who had been recording earlier steps forward, looking embarrassed, but determined. Hey man, he says to John, holding out his phone. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. You didn't deserve that. John looks at him, surprised but grateful. It's okay, he quietly says. Thank you. The elderly woman who spoke earlier approaches the counter, her eyes warm. You're doing great, dear. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. John's smile widens a little, his confidence slowly returning. As the customers continue to show their support, Tom Hardy steps back, blending into the crowd. He's not looking for applause or recognition. He just wanted to do the right thing. He grabs a bottle of water from a nearby shelf and heads toward the self-checkout, hoping to slip away unnoticed. But before he can leave, the store manager, Linda, approaches him. She's a middle-aged woman with a warm smile and a professional demeanor. Mr. Hardy, she says, extending her hand, I just wanted to thank you. What you did there, it meant a lot to John, and to all of us. Tom shakes her hand, his expression humble. I just said what needed to be said. John's a good kid. He deserves to be treated with respect. Linda nods, her eyes sparkling with emotion. He's one of the hardest working employees we have. Always shows up with a smile, no matter what. People like you remind us to be better. Tom gives her a slight smile. We all have those moments. Just make sure John knows he's appreciated, okay? Linda promises she will, and with that, Tom heads for the exit. But before leaving, he looks back at John, who is now confidently helping the next customer. Tom's smile widens, and he steps out into the California sunshine. John's perspective. As the line moves forward, John begins to feel a sense of belonging that he hasn't felt in a long time. The words of support from the customers and the memory of Tom's encouragement fill him with quiet strength. He thinks back to times when he struggled, moments when he doubted himself, when he wondered if he would ever be good enough. But today is different. Today, he understands that he is good enough, just as he is. When his shift finally ends, John heads to the break room to grab his things. His colleague, Maria, a friendly woman in her 30s, stops him on the way. Hey, John, she says, placing a hand on his shoulder. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry I wasn't there to help, but I'm really proud of you. You handled it like a pro. John shyly smiles. Thanks, Maria. At first it was scary, but then Mr. Hardy came in and said all those nice things. It made me feel better. Maria grins. Well, he's right. You're an important part of this team, John. Never forget that. Meanwhile, outside the store, the young man who recorded the confrontation uploads the video to social media. He adds a caption, Today, I witnessed something incredible. Tom Hardy stood up for a cashier with Down syndrome who was being bullied. This is what kindness looks like. #respect, #be kind. Within minutes, the video begins to gain traction. Comments from people all over the world pour in, praising Tom for his actions and sending messages of support to John. As John heads home that evening, he feels a sense of pride he hasn't felt in a long time. The sun is setting, casting a warm golden light over the neighborhood. He reflects on the events of the day, the hurtful words, the fear, and then the overwhelming support. He remembers Tom's words. You're doing great. Just keep being yourself. For the first time in a long while, John feels like he truly belongs. The screen fades to black as John reaches the front door, a gentle but confident smile on his face. Text on the screen reads, The next day, the world would see what happened in that supermarket, and everything would change. The next morning, John wakes up to a flood of messages on his phone. Overnight, the video of Tom Hardy defending him went viral, gathering millions of views and shares. Hashtags like #respect for John and #bekind are trending worldwide. John's heart races as he scrolls through the comments. John, you're an inspiration. Keep being yourself. This is what real kindness looks like. Thank you, Tom Hardy. We need more people like John in this world. Shocked but moved, John shows the messages to his mom, who bursts into tears of pride. I always knew you were special, sweetheart, she says, giving him a tight hug. At the supermarket, there's an electric atmosphere, news crews have gathered outside, and customers line up not only to shop but also to meet John and show their support. Linda, the store manager, calls a team meeting. What happened yesterday was a wake-up call for all of us, she says. John, you showed us what resilience and kindness look like. And Tom Hardy reminded us that standing up for each other matters. She announces that the store will launch an initiative promoting inclusivity and kindness with John as the face of the campaign. The employees cheer, and John blushes, experiencing a sense of pride he's never felt before. Meanwhile, Tom Hardy returns to the set of his latest film. During a break, his assistant shows him the viral video and the outpouring of support for John. Tom smiles, but his expression turns thoughtful. It's not about me, he says. It's about John. He's the real hero in all of this. Later that same day, Tom posts a message on his social media. What happened in that supermarket wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about doing the right thing. John, you inspire us all. Keep shining. #respect, #bekind. The post goes viral within minutes, further amplifying the message of kindness and inclusivity. The supermarket becomes a symbol of hope and unity. Shoppers from all walks of life come to show their support, many sharing their own stories of overcoming adversity. John's co-workers, who had once been silent, now proudly stand by his side. One day, a young boy with Down syndrome comes into the store with his parents. Shyly, he approaches John, handing him a handmade card that reads, "You're my hero." John kneels down to the boy, his eyes welling up with tears. "Thank you," he says. "You're my hero too." As the weeks pass, John's confidence continues to grow. He's no longer just a cashier. He's a symbol of resilience and kindness. He begins giving interviews, sharing his story, and encouraging others to stand up for what's right. Everyone deserves respect, he says in one interview. No matter who you are or what you can do, you matter. The story ends with John returning to the supermarket, helping a customer with his signature smile and care. The camera pulls back, showing a bustling store now filled with laughter and warmth. A voiceover sounds as the screen fades to black. In a world that sometimes feels divided, it's the small acts of kindness that bring us together. John's story reminds us that everyone has value, and standing up for one another can change lives. Be kind, be brave, be the change.